Picking up where I left off last time, I now want to get all of the remaining collabs, so the ones I don't have inside this table. Because I don't have access to Excel 365, this is a big ordeal, but what I'll be doing is first I want to grab the index position inside the all collabs table for my unlocked collabs, so the ones I've already gotten, because any collab I haven't unlocked means that I can't find it inside this table, so it will return blank. And then of course I need to handle the error, because it won't actually give me blank, it will give me an error. So I will say I want to match, and the item I want to match is then this value, the first cell inside of my sheet with my unlock collabs. I want to say, where do I want to find it? Well, I want to find it inside the entire column of the table with all my collabs, and I want an exact match. And this will work fine for the first 6 I have, because I have unlocked them, but when I then copy it down, I will get NA, which I can solve again by being a bit lazy and say that if this returns NA, in other words, if I can't find my collab, then I just want to return nothing. And I'm just going to start out by making another column that has my index numbers, which is then the index numbers of my weapons. And this will make sense when I get to the next part. Because what I want to do now is then to say, because just as before I did that trick where I said, hey, is this a number? I want to do something similar to that. So I want to say that if I can find this value within this range or this array, then I want to return 1, because that means I've already unlocked it. And if I can't find this value inside the range, then I haven't unlocked that index. So this is the index of my all weapons. And the trick here is to use the sum product to make this be an array. And because I'm using sum product, I can use an array as an argument, because sum product will produce a scalar result. So I'll be saying sum product, which is just multiplying one by one array with another, of this value. So is this value, actually I need a parentheses. So is this value the index of the current row? Can that be found within this array? And then I multiply that with 1, because I need to convert that into a number basically. So this is something that works, but it's a bit weird. You can see how here it's kind of messing up, which means I did something wrong. And the reason why this looks a bit weird is that I'm not actually saying, hey, why is this 0? Well, that's because index 3, which is then the bone bros, I haven't unlocked that because I can't find 3 in this range, but I can find 1, and I can find 2, because I can find 1, and I can find 2, and I can find 4, and I can find 7. So they return as 0. And the reason why my formula is then wrong is because I forgot to anchor. This needs to be B61, but this array needs to be fixed. And then I can try to copy it down and it will behave nicely. Because there should be a 1 for row 4, because I can find 4 in this array. And I can find 7 in this array, and I can find 20 and 21. So what's going on here is that I'm saying I want to multiply 1 with this array, and if I press F9 I can see the values, and these are number, and then blank, and then I am multiplying this, which will give false, false, true, because there is a row where, and this is the tricky part where it's hard to explain, because the third row of the red array returns 1, and B61 is equal to 1, which means that this is a comparison, which would then return false, false, true. And then I'm multiplying my array of falses and 1 true with 1, which converts false into 0 and true into 1. And then because I'm using sum product, it's then saying, take this array of 0, 0, 1, 0, 0, 0, 0, and sum that, which gives 1. And it's weird, and this is why you need your boss to pay for Excel 365, so you don't have to do these weird things. But it works. So 1 is equal to already unlocked, which means I then want to hide those afterwards. And then it's actually everything I've done before. It's the exact same thing to say that if this value is equal to 0, then I haven't unlocked it, which means I then want to do index and say, well, what is my array? That is my TBL all collabs, and in this case I want the collab column, and I want my row number to be my index position, and I want to anchor that on the B column, and I also want to anchor this on the C column, so that when I copy it, it will act the same. When I copy it to the right, it still looks at this cell. When I copy it down, it looks at the current row. So that is fine. And then I want to say that if this cell is not equal to 0, so if it's equal to 1, then I want it to do nothing. And then because I can't find index 24 inside my table because there aren't 24 collabs, it will give me a reference error, which again, I will be lazy and use if error, because the error is caused by me trying to copy too much data so that I'm future-proofed. And then it should, if I've done everything correct, I can just copy over and it looks fine. So that is fine. And then of course I have all of these zeros. So if I wanted to, I could do something like checking what is the value of this. Well, that's actually blank. I could do something like copy everything here and then add conditional formatting to say that if the collab is empty, then I want everything to be empty. Or rather, I want the font color to be white. So now I'm doing this live and it'll be interesting if I can do that. I am acting upon A61, so I need to say if D61, and I need an anchor, so I'm always looking at column D, but 61 will change depending on what row I'm in. If this is equal to blank, well then it's true, and then my font color needs to be white. And then this does work. And I was worried because it might not understand that the value here is blank, because actually there is a value. Well, there's a formula, but the formula returns blank. But it's acted nicely. So again, this is before. I have all of these zeros, and this is after. And then I just want to do a count of how many have I unlocked and how many have I not. And actually it's a bit funny how it's hiding not these values, because I have a row 3 and 5 and 6. I just think that's fun to see, but I still have values inside of my columns here, and I'm going to use that. So I want to say how many unlocks have I and how many do I not have. And this is simply counting all of the rows that in this array that have a value. So it simply counts how many rows in this range return a number, which would then be if these 6 values, and it would return a number for these 6 values, but for these it can't find it because it can't find the unlock collab inside all collab. And the number of locked collabs is then counting again the numbers, and here I actually need to change something because in my notes I stopped at 23 because I don't have more, but I future-proofed this version. So I can't simply say account A, or account rather, of this, that would be 34, and then minus how many I have unlocked, because that will give a wrong answer. There are only 23, but I want this to be future-proofed. My solution is simply to say, well, how many of the cells in the D column are blank, because I know my answer needs to be 17 because there are 23 collabs, minus 6 is 17. So I can simply say that I want to count the number of rows inside my all collabs table, and actually I can't use count because this is text. So all of those inside that table. So I don't want to reference the sheet, I want to reference the table itself. So count how many rows inside the collab column have a value, that's 23, but that's all collabs. So I can then just minus how many have I unlocked. And likewise here, I could, why is that 6? Likewise here, I can just say that I want to count A. So that's option 1, to say count A for the unlocks, which gives 6. Or I could do what I did before. How many cells in this range return a value, which is 6. So either count this, which I think would be more proper because then I'm in the same sheet and you can see what's going on, or just do count A of the table itself. But I think this is more proper because you can just click here and say, well, what am I referencing? I'm referencing this. And then the last thing I want to add is I want to say, well, what weapons do I still have an unlock collab for? So which weapon should I prioritize getting? The first thing I need to do is to get a list of all of the weapons, which again, if I had access to unique, would be easy because it would just be an array that spills down, but I don't have access to that. But I can use my named range, which was all weapons, which then gives me an array, is to use the index function to act upon my array, which is then a named range, which returns an array. And then I just say 1, and then in the next row, I want to say 1 plus 1. So actually I would want to add an index column, just to say 1 and then 1 plus 1. So instead of saying grab me the first index, I want to grab the row that is equal to this value, and then I can copy down. And then again, I'll have these reference errors because I don't have more than 16 weapons. So again, if error, just return nothing, because this isn't important to really manage errors in this specific instance. I want to say count if my range is in all of the collabs. So how many times can I find that specific weapon within the whole table? So how many are there in total? Because there are some weapons that have 2 collabs and some that have 1. My condition is then how many times do I find this weapon name within these 2 columns, which is 3 in this case. But there are some that have 2. Again, this is just going to give 0. So I could just say if this is greater than 0, then I want to return that. Otherwise, I want to return blank. And if I had Excel 365, I could make a variable so that I don't calculate the same thing twice. So here I can see I have the wami water and sausage, which only have 2 collabs. And then I want the remaining, and that is where I want to do a count if up here. So exact same function, count if. I want to say how many times in this array, how many times, and I want to anchor that actually, how many times can I find that weapon? Which then gives me 0 for bounce ball, and 2 and 3 and 2. So if I find a collab with X potato, just so we can see what happens, how it updates, I can just take that one and add that. So now I've unlocked that. I wanted to insert that as a value. So now there are a total of 3 collabs for X potato, but I only have 1 remaining, which would then be X potato. So this row, and then the number of unlocked collabs is then just the opposite of these 2. So I don't have any unlocks using the bounce ball, and then this gets mad because it's trying to find nothing within that, like how many blanks do I find inside of that table up here, which I will just be solving with the lazy method using conditional formatting, because that's actually all I have left to do before I just do a sort. So I can say conditional formatting and then say, I want to say if number of collabs is not a number. Actually, I can't do that just in that. I just want to show what I want to do. I want to say not and then say is number and that. So that is not a number. That is not a number. And that's because I want to return true, which it does here because this is not a number, and then not turns false into true. So if I take that formula, so if not is number and then it's not C, it should be A, and it should be anchored on the column actually. So anchored on the C column. I'm saying if the current row's value in the C column, if that is not a number, then I want it to be invisible. But it still gives me that error sign, which I can then get rid of like this and just say I don't care. But I'm not completely done because I do want to highlight the last cell just so I know that. And then I can select everything and I want to sort it so that you know what weapon should you prioritize. Well, you shouldn't prioritize bounce balls because you actually have all of the collabs for it, which means I should actually add another conditional formatting and say that if the D column for the current row, if that's equal to 0, which it is when you have all the unlocks, then it should also be invisible. and I only have one like that. So now bounce ball is not visible. And now I can then say I want to sort this, a custom sort. I want to sort on column D, where I want largest to smallest. And then of course it gets mad again. And actually that messed up, so I don't want to do that anyway. Because now it knows that this value is 36, which messes up everything, all of the references. So I'll just leave it like that, and then maybe you could do something like highlighting this column and say, I want to highlight the maximum. Because I can calculate the maximum from a range, and actually that won't work because I give 36. So if you can live with this being a bit broken, then I just highlight those rows where I have a value in it, and then I can say largest to smallest. In the end, you end up with just a table that has all the weapons where you don't have all the collabs for, and you can then see, well, how many do I have remaining? So this column would tell you basically which weapon should you prioritize. And I can see here that X potato only has one remaining, so I should not prioritize that. But something like spider cooking has 3 collabs, so I should prioritize that one. And that is all I have for the pure Excel solution. Yep,